The United States has an industry, a trillions of dollars worth of industry, protected by law, supported by artificial scarcity, convicted in federal court of manipulating prices, and actively pricing the middle class, known as the U.S. housing market. The video will prove it, one number at a time. Stay here for the next 20 minutes, because it is not an opinion. It is court decisions, congressional testimony, and hard data from Harvard, the Federal Reserve, and Goldman Sachs. When it is over, you either say, "I knew about this for a long time," or you'll be angry that no one has spoken clearly before. And given what these numbers actually show, both reactions are perfectly reasonable. The housing market isn't just collapsing, it breaks in one direction, and that direction is away from you. Start with raw math, because math is where stories can quickly become uncomfortable. The median home price in the United States is now about $416,900, while the median household income is about $83,150 a year, which means that the average home price in the United States is now 5 times the average annual salary. 5 times your salary? That number has history. As early as 1985, the price-to-income ratio hovered around 3 to 1, a traditional, strict, but manageable benchmark that lenders, economists, and financial planners have relied on for decades. By 2020, the ratio had climbed to 4 to -1, and some complained that economists had published their papers unchanged. Subsequently, the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard confirmed that by 2024, the ratio would reach 5 to 1, bringing the United States close to the worst affordability reading ever. This 5-fold figure assumes that you already have a 20% down payment in your bank account and $83,000 in cash for a $417,000 home alone. The median annual income in the United States, before mortgage payments, once you walk into the door and raise money at today's rate, hovering between 6.4% and 6.5% at the 30-year fixed rate through early 2026. The median monthly payment for the house is between $2,100 and $2,300, without property taxes, insurance, or maintenance. CBS News offered a specific salary. Now you need $121,400 a year to comfortably afford a typical American home, not a luxury property, not a coastal outlier, just a median home anywhere in the country. The National Association of Home Builders updated its affordability data in 2025 and found that 76.4 million households, 57% of all households in the United States, could not afford $300,000. The Fed's data came to the same conclusion from another angle, showing that homebuyers today need to earn 43% more than ordinary workers to pay the typical purchase fee, 43% above average, buying only average. This is not a rough-edged market. The wall was built to keep most people out. Much of the discussion about the housing crisis ignores the actual mechanism for keeping the broken system humming: mortgage rate lockdowns in effect, which explains why home sales remain at a 30-year low even as home prices climb. Here is how to set the trap. Between 2020 and 2022, when the Federal Reserve cut interest rates to near zero to offset the economic damage caused by the epidemic, millions of Americans bought or refinanced homes at interest rates of 2.5%, 2.9%, and 3.1%, almost fictional compared with today. Then, in 2022, the Federal Reserve sharply shifted to raising interest rates to fight inflation, with mortgage rates soaring from 3% to more than 7% in less than a year. One of the fastest rate hikes in modern history. Homeowners locked in at 3% suddenly found themselves in luck. because selling meant giving up a payment that could never be recovered. Calculate the actual situation of real families. A homeowner who pays about $1,630 a month on a $400,000 property with a 2.75% mortgage rate would pay $2,000 a month for exactly the same value, a jump from zero lifestyle upgrades to 30% monthly costs. If the same homeowner sold for 6.4% and tried to buy something comparable today, staying where you are is a rational choice. As millions of Americans have done, sellers stop selling, inventory dries up, and buyers eventually compete for what is left. So prices rise as demand exceeds supply. PBS NewsHour confirmed that 2025 was the fourth consecutive 30-year low in housing sales, and a supply gap report released by Realtor.com in early 2026 found that the gap between demand and available housing had widened to more than 4 million units, up from 3.8 million units last year. More than 4 million homes are in short supply, and new construction is far from closing the gap. In 2025, only 1.36 million homes broke ground, a figure that is actually 0.6% lower than in 2024. In the wrong direction. Struggling sellers have not left. Builders are not building fast enough. Buyers are still squabbling over what is available, and they pay hundreds of dollars more a month than they buy from sellers. This is not a balancing act. This is a pressure cooker without a release valve. Nothing justifies the term scam more than a federal antitrust ruling. In October 2023, the National Association of Realtors filed a ruling when a federal jury found the group conspiring to raise real estate agent commissions. Under the anti-monopoly law, the damages would be $1.78 billion, possibly tripling to $5.36 billion. As of March 2024, NAR had reached a settlement of $418 million and agreed to amend the agency remuneration rules nationwide. To understand why the ruling mattered, you have to understand how the commission's structure worked for decades. The standard commission, which ranges from 5% to 6% of the sales price, is split between the seller's agent and the buyer's agent, and the seller pays all, both including agents who technically represent the buyer. In a $400,000 home, that means sellers have $20,000 to $24,000 left in their pockets, much of which goes to someone whose financial interests are not exactly the same as the buyer they were supposed to represent. The lawsuit argued, and the jury agreed, that the arrangement artificially maintained a high commission rate because the buyer's agent had every reason to push the customer to the property that generated the most return, and the seller had no real leverage to challenge the structure. The entire setup follows the rules of the NAR-controlled multiple listing service, which means that any seller who wants buyers to see their home must follow those rules or remain invisible. The settlement agreement took effect on the 17th of August, 2024, cutting off this link. The seller no longer needs to provide compensation to the buyer's agent through MLS, and the buyer now signs a clear agreement with the agent in advance. To clarify how compensation flows, industry resistance has slowed the impact of the real world, and many deals still look like old structures. But the legal battle has opened things that have been closed for generations. Here's the thing: rigging commissions is only in court. Supply manipulation, zoning protections, the political machinery to block new housing, all of which do not require courts because technically it is never illegal. Power works when those in power set the rules. Judging from the money in the housing shortage, the situation is not complicated. People who already own homes benefit directly from the shortage, as supply constraints push up the value of existing homes, while the same homeowners dominate the political process of controlling whether to build new ones. When supply tightens and prices rise, homeowners accumulate equity but do nothing. Baby boomers, 79.9% of them own their own homes, see their main assets climb in markets where the rules were favorable to them. In the years before the conversation began, it feels like the appreciation of money, in large part a product of policies that discourage construction and help those who do not yet own property. Zoning is where mechanisms are no longer abstract. Single family neighborhoods, the kind of neighborhoods where apartments, duplexes, and townhouses are prohibited by law from being built on large swaths of residential land, cover most of the developable land in most cities in the United States, and exist because homeowners lobby, vote to protect it, and use local planning boards to reinforce it year after year. The logic is simple. New supplies may reduce the value of nearby properties, so existing owners will fight them, and politicians who need those votes will abide by these rules. Houston offers a counterexample to illustrate this, a comparison that is hard to refute. It is no coincidence that one of China's largest cities, with relatively loose zoning, is one of the country's main affordable subways. Goldman Sachs estimated in 2025 that the US needed to build at least 3M to 4M more homes than normal to fill the existing supply gap. And Realtor.com concluded in its 2026 analysis that the current deficit was 4.03 million and growing. Construction costs are also rising as labor shortages, material prices, and tariff uncertainty from 2025 trade policies affect timber, steel, and manufactured goods, all of which directly affect the final price buyers pay at the close of the day. The system is structured at all levels to protect the value of existing housing stocks at the expense of anyone trying to enter the market for the first time. This is no accident of supply and demand. This is the architect's result. The typical first-time home buyer in the United States hit a record high in 2025, a record that is not worth celebrating, reaching 40, not 28, not 32, but 40, which means that Americans now spend an average of more than a decade paying rent to accumulate other people's assets, and the price of entering the market has climbed out of reach. The delay creates a compounding cost that most financial conversations grossly underestimate. Every year outside the market is a year without equity construction, a year without fixed payments to prevent inflation, and a year without what current homeowners see as automatic appreciation. When first-time home buyers fell to 21% of all home sales in 2025, another record low. This data point is actually a measure of how quickly home ownership has become exclusive rather than available. Millennials are the largest generation in American history, with a home ownership rate of 55.4%, compared with 72.7% for Gen X and 79.9% for baby boomers. While this has been called a national priority for years, the number of millennials has barely changed in 2025. This gap is important because owning a home is the way the American middle class has historically accumulated wealth, not the stock market, not a retirement account, but a house. Home equity accounts for about 65% of the net worth of typical middle class households, meaning that a generation locked in ownership before age 40 has less structural impact on the wealth created by parents. It is hard to see this as a simple market outcome People who already own homes are the main political force holding back construction, which will make housing affordable for those who do not already own homes. Homeowners vote at higher interest rates, attend district meetings, elect local officials who approve or reject new developments, and continue to use that power to protect assets that remain high, only because supply remains scarce. Aspiring buyers, younger, frequent renters, much less politically appealing, will be watching. This is not an unfortunate free market. It was a wealth transfer disguised as property rights. The rebuttal arrived as scheduled. When people want something, the price rises. And that is how the market works. Calling it a hoax to misunderstand basic economics. It sounds clear that unless you look at the details of what makes the price system truly fair, it will soon collapse. When both sides carry equal information, when neither side has disproportionate power, and when market access is not legally restricted, the supply and demand system produces fair results. The housing market has failed on all three fronts, and failure is not subtle. Historically, buyers have received far less transaction information than sellers, a gap that NAR's commission structure has maintained for decades because buyers' agents are financially tied to sellers' performance. New supplies are legally blocked through zoning laws, which means that the scarcity driving price increases is not natural, but caused by government policies adopted by those who benefit from it. The transaction itself passes the fees on to the buyer. Transaction costs range from 2% to 5% of the purchase price as a baseline, meaning that people who buy $400,000 homes pay an additional $8,000 to $20,000 before obtaining the keys, which are distributed to lenders, appraisers, title companies, insurance providers, and inspectors, each for a fee. A highly competitive real estate market will have transparent commission structures, zoning laws that allow supply to meet demand, and service pricing determined by actual competition. Instead, there is a regulated, graded, politically protected system that is calibrated to extract the maximum amount from buyers while rewarding those who enter early and pull the ladder behind them. This is where it lands, depending on where you sit. If you already own a home, your assets are climbing, in part because the market collapse has deterred others, and it is much more honest to sit there and endure the discomfort than to pretend that the appreciation is fully deserved. If you want to buy something, staring at a $400,000 price tag and a $80,000 monthly payment of $2,200. This video is not meant to tell you it is a personal failure. The rules of the game are written before you arrive, not in your heart. At least some things are changing. The NAR settlement opened the commission wall. For the first time in generations, California, Montana, Washington, and Florida have passed zoning reform legislation that allows for increased housing density. Federal pressure has linked housing subsidies to zoning changes by the previous administration, which proposed loosening federal controls on residential construction land. That pressure exists, even if enforcement is slow, but structural incentives have not moved quickly. Lock-in homeowners, flexible voters, and real estate lobby groups for 20 years, and the alliance will not dissolve after the policy is announced. So bring these 4 points. The housing affordability crisis is not a natural disaster. It is built on a piecemeal basis, through policy choices, industry lobbying, and political decisions that favor those who already own homes, not everyone else. The wealth gap between homeowners and non-homeowners will continue to widen until supply increases significantly and the commission structure becomes truly competitive. If you buy in this market, Treat every assumption as negotiable. Commission, agency structure, target, city. Because some sunshine subways and Midwest markets still provide real value relative to revenue, the next generation will inherit a reformed housing market or a permanent, stratified housing market, with ownership belonging to the rich and rental as a permanent condition for everyone else. Which version we get is a political choice. First of all, because people understand the system clearly enough to demand different things. That is what the video is about. If it is a bit of an eye-opener, click the like button because it puts the content in front of more people who need to listen. If you want to continue to learn more about the financial system that shapes your daily life, subscribe, then write a comment below. Are you a homeowner who watches your equity climb while fretting about how much other people are spending to get you there? Or someone who keeps a down payment when your goals keep diverging? Both men are now watching, and their experiences are as real as the data suggest. See you next time.